What's going on, everyone? Today I'm here with Mr. Kevin Amos, and he's from Seattle, Washington. Now, he owns a construction company, a successful brother, and people that we definitely look up to be positive within our community. So, Kevin, thank you for joining us on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be able to converse and talk to people who are about being innovative and also informative and helping people out and giving good information to the masses.
Now, when it comes to starting a construction company, I mean, did you go to school or is something you always wanted to do? I mean, how did you start doing that?
Well, it's interesting. I spent 14 years as an electrician in Local 46, and during the time of being an electrician, you kind of see, structures as they are being built, and so it always fascinated a young kid when I used to see builders building a neighborhood. So just one day, that was something that I was going to do. Of course, I was motivated with a $100,000 contract that basically got me involved into the field of construction as a general, and utilized some of my old drafting skills and drew some blueprints up, got the permit, and I was off and running.
So, did you go to school and get your degree in engineering or drafting or something like that?
No, not at all. The amazing thing here in Seattle, Washington, is that anything under 5,000 square feet, you don't need a licensed architect. So if a person just has the skills, you can actually draw up your own house.
Oh, that's good to hear for those that possibly have the skills. Now, the next question I have is, are you affiliated with a lot of groups within the city?
Yeah, I'm affiliated with several different groups. For one, I'm a precinct committee officer, PCO, for the Democratic Party. That's another conversation. I'm also on the board with the NAACP. I'm one of the chairs for education. And then I have again, my own organization that I also am the head of, and that's called, our organization, it's called For You. And basically what it is an organization that helps people in terms of understanding how the tax system works here in America so that they can actually, without asking their boss, give themselves a raise on their job just by changing their W-4.
Now, you had mentioned the NAACP. We had interviewed Dr. Shalice Seacrest a while back, and she's good sister.
She's cool, sister.
Yeah.
We hopefully, and I wish she could have been a little bit more innovative in helping us in this last election that we were actually suppressed from being involved with. So we have 54 black PCOs, precinct committee officers, who were vote in the next state senator, all because they broke the bylaws. We filed a lawsuit against them. The lawsuit is still pending. We have a hearing coming up. However, the thing is this, people are pursuing their own interests, then they forget about the masses. I'm not one of those type of people, and I wish she would have been partied with the lawsuit, even though she's an attorney. She went the other direction, and I actually put in a blog and let her know that these white individuals were not going to elect her as state senator. See, in 2014, I was the campaign manager for a gentleman by the name of Louis Watanabe. He ran against this very socialist woman by the name of Pramila Jayapal. Pramila pulled a little dirty trick down at the precincts by getting about 94 people who were not ever a part of the party, but they actually joined for the $15 fee, and in a month in advance prior to the committee officers doing their endorsements. So those 90 people actually came in and we were able to vote as members. So it appeared that the 37th district actually was endorsing this woman, and it was a bunch of primarily. So she had the endorsement, so then therefore the people actually typically go with whatever's on the endorsement pamphlet that is being mailed to the Democrats. Oh, I was just going to say, so therefore, we end up losing the vote in the district that is primarily uh, there's over 31,000 African Americans in the 37th district, and about less than 1,500 voted.
Wow. So you said you told Dr. Shalee that the white people's not going to let her in. Why did you tell her that?
Well, because so there was 54 African Americans who were being denied the opportunities as committee officers to vote. See, these people have this ideal that if you're black and you're a Democrat, then you're only supposed to vote in the primaries and things like that. You're not supposed to be committee officers, right? Because what they do is that they say you're involved in the Democratic Party, but you're only involved as a voter. The precinct committee officers are people who are able to vote in policies. They're able to vote in replacements for senators or different offices within the Democratic Party. So when the 54 committee officers who outnumbered the white individuals inside of there, they actually pulled their little dirty tricks. And what they did is they went to the King County District Committee chairman, who was a gentleman who just got voted out and because, you know, oftentimes they don't see themselves as being accountable to nobody, but they were accountable to the other precincts officers. He got voted out, but what he did, he suspended. And when he suspended the votes, all of those who were precinct committee officers, their time of being committee officers had ran out. And so now it was time to wait till January to re-enter the new committee officer. So they did this by design because they didn't want us to put in a gentleman by the name of Jesse Weinberry, who primarily has already been a state representative here in Washington.
So basically what you're saying is the Democratic Party, even though they told this, we are inclusive and we represent everybody, but at the end of the day, the Democratic Party is no different than the Republican Party.
No difference. In fact, let me give you some statistics about these crimes. So the 15th Amendment, which was enacted to basically say free slave males, men, voters, but to be a voter, you had to be a citizen. So then, therefore, what that done is that they had to basically, you know, make legislation, and that became the 15th Amendment, which was the first civil rights legislation after the Civil War. The problem with that, not one Democrat voted in favor of this. So this was primarily a Republican legislation that we have benefited from. And then when you get to 1956, you have a reintroduction of some more literature to add to that, which basically they then introduced color. Because remember, the 15th Amendment initially just said free slave, male. It didn't even give a gender, a color. By the time we get to 1964 and 1965, we're now civil rights movement, and we're talking about the Civil Rights Bill, and we're also talking about the Voting Rights Bill. Now, here's what's interesting about both of them. Now, when it came to the Civil Rights Bill, there was 83% of the people who voted for it were Republicans. 80% of them who voted, that were Democrats, voted for it. So you end up having this thing where it appears that one party doesn't go for us. But it was from 1922, 48. Black people had both parties that were trying to get our votes. So what they would primarily do is that the voter would say, okay, well, what does this one have? So then when you had Roosevelt and the New Deal and stuff like that, we went that way, or Truman. And then came in 1960, you end up having Kennedy elected, and primarily got elected because Dr. King's dad grew fond of this, voted for based off his religious belief. He believed that the Catholic Church was an apostate church, so he wasn't going to vote that way. But because Dr. King was released from jail, President Kennedy, it made Dr. King's dad go ahead and vote for him from that. So then we started to shift, and primarily when we shifted, We wasn't shifting because we were not shifting primarily because of Democrats. We were shifting from perceived policies that we thought was directly coming from them, and it really didn't go that way. When you look at the votes in the Democratic Party, they had 270 votes that they could vote. Out of 270 votes, they only voted 150 in favor. So when you start to look at that, you say, wait a minute, there was a great divide there. And so another thing is in the 60s that was interesting. In 1968, you had an African-American man who's the father of affirmative action by the name of Arthur Allen Fletcher. Arthur Allen Fletcher was a man who came up here during a time when they were, we were in the 60s and we were, doing this thing of building a nuclear plant. So he built a nuclear plant over east of the mountains from where we're at now. And he went up there with a program called the Poverty Program. And he taught individuals who worked up there on how to actually grow wealth. Well, he then was noticed by a Republican governor up here who then recommended him to be one of the spokespersons of the 1968 Republican Party convention down in Miami, whereby he met Richard Nixon. After Nixon won the election, he put him in his administration as Assistant Secretary of Labor. And he crafted the nation's first affirmative action policies. Then did executive order and wrote it into a law. So when you look at what's really been happening, we've always kind of assumed that, one way or another, that the Democrats are really doing this. And so, this is primarily what the Democrats wanted to do. People say, well, look, the Democrats have done a lot for us. Well, even on the crime bill, 1993, I don't know if too many people know this, but Vice President Biden crafted that bill along with Chuck Schumer.
Mm-hmm.
And there was no Republican who signed on with them. So there was no other Republican crafter of the crime bill that incarcerated millions of African Americans on a crack cocaine crime bill that was primarily an incarceration crime bill. Really wasn't about crime was everywhere. It was the appearance. So basically what the media did is they focused in geographical locations to say crime is everywhere, when that really wasn't the case, just so that they could get this passed and Bill Clinton would sign it. So that was the birth baby of the Democratic Party.
Yeah, and you see they don't craft no crime bill for crystal meth or heroin. Where's that crime bill at?
No. You know what they have for them folks now? Here's what they have. Rehabs. Mm-hmm. Treatments. We got to help them. You see, because the crime bill was primarily, it was a unification of the prison system that had been turned over to private industries. So private industries were saying, look, we the same folks who put money up on your election. So if you look at the Democratic Party, you'd be surprised to find those institutes or businesses that give money, like the Koch brothers, they give money to both parties. Always looking out for their own interests. And even Donald Trump said this. He said, I give money to Hillary and Jeb Bush because I'm trying to, make sure that I'm taken care of. And this is that type of lobbying that goes on. And so even when you look at now, in this state, 54 African Americans being suppressed by the party. So here's what I told them prior to this vote. I said, when I was a campaign manager, you guys know that you played this dirty trick with this woman, Pramila. You allowed these people who were socialists and they came from all over, and you did not vet them, you didn't ask them whether they were qualified and this, that, and the other, and you allowed them to vote. So she could get recommended as being the person who did. I said, but let me tell you right now. I said, if you do this dirty trick, here's what's going to happen. We as African Americans, we know how to go back to the Lincoln Party. Because since you guys want to go back to acting like you want us to be slaves to you and serve you, but you don't serve us, make an adjustment to that. So if you play this dirty games, we're going to show you basically what we will do. So here's what I've done. So what I did is last week, I made a phone call to a newly elected Republican chairperson in county. And I told him, I said, look, the Democrats are taking us for granted. I said, if you look at the numbers, we really didn't vote in volume for Hillary Clinton because we knew that was a game. So we're waking up. I said, now, if you want our votes, here's what I need you to do. I need you to bring back affirmative action to the state of Washington. There's 47 states, including Maine, that has affirmative action, which is the white supremacist capital.
Mm-hmm.
But you got Arizona, California, and Seattle, Washington, that doesn't have affirmative action. And even the guy who started affirmative action, so this is the birthplace of affirmative action, and you don't even have it. Because what they did is they did this little sneaky game. An initiative called I-200, and it was an initiative after Prop 209. It was sort of the same. But what they did is they crafted it in a way that says discrimination is bad. And so they only approached the college states. So don't you think it would be fair that there should be no discrimination for anyone who wants to go to college? That's how they crafted it. So the white people voted for it. What's interesting is that the affirmative action crafting is still existing. Now, in 1998, you had Bill Clinton revise it because it was then there was challenges coming from a lot of white organizations and people who basically wanted the 100% of the deal. They didn't even want to give you 10%. They want to take that back from you. So what happened is this. The court ruled in a California case, so Bill Clinton had gotten a little wise. He wanted to make African Americans and other people appear that he's really there for them. So what he did is that in the bill, he a new executive order to the existing executive order affirmative action, he did this. He said, women, minorities, economically disadvantaged white males. Now, why did he do that? He did that because the Supreme Court said you cannot make a law or do a judge based off of race. Because even the 15th Amendment, it was saying not off of race. Okay? So him crafting that socially, economically disadvantaged white males. So in other words, if you got a hillbilly, you know you don't really want to go to school, but he can if he wants to.
Correct.
Socially, economically disadvantaged. So the crafting of the language was really strategic. So here's what I'm suggesting. So I suggested to the Republican chairperson who wants to basically reach out to African Americans and say, hey, you guys' moral views are more like us. You guys are not for gay marriage. You guys are not for some of these socially irresponsible things that happens in society. You guys are for family. Yes, we do. But our value system has been hidden among being called a Democrat. And so therefore, since 1964, 65, really there hasn't been anything that black people have gotten. This whole ideology called people of color. Now, when we fall under that, guys, here's the problem. We then say, see, we're helping people of color. Then you'll get these little socialists from India who will come up here and they'll say, I'm for people of color. Now, that's just a code word. And I've been suggesting, how about if we get rid of that people of color, and maybe if we get rid of this white and black thing that basically came upon us in the 1800s and in the latter parts of the 1900s that really made it everybody from Europe, and now they're called white people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who were from sub-Saharan Africa and brought here as slaves and descendants of them, you call them black people. Use the word African Americans, but it's black and white. But everybody else, look how they group them. So you take Asian, for instance. In Asian, you can have Filipinos, Japanese, Malaysian, Chinese, and all of those, all because of a geographical location. But then check this out. Up here, you got East Africans, West Africans, Northern Africans who live up here. Guess where they put them? Or is with the African American, they put them in their own category. But you take Hispanics, and that could be Africa. They just speak a language that's Spanish. But Hispanics is not a people, it's a language, just like Asian. These are all different groups who have different culture within their culture. But white people put them together and say white. Why? Because they knew that if they can identify all these people who have a pigmentation, which is somebody else's, we can just call them as one people and trick the whole group. So we're using color to make an advantage for themselves to the color, and say they don't use colors, but they're using color. Sort of like an oxymoron.